Will and Teresa had always loved exploring abandoned places, but the old mansion on the edge of town was different. It stood as a silent guardian of secrets long forgotten, shrouded in mystery and tales of terror. On a moonless night, driven by curiosity and a touch of foolish bravery, they decided to venture inside. As they crossed the threshold, the air turned colder. The floorboards creaked under their feet, echoing through the empty hallways. Dusty portraits stared down at them with lifeless eyes, and cobwebs draped like curtains in forgotten rooms. "Will, this place gives me the creeps," Teresa whispered, her voice trembling. Will squeezed her hand reassuringly. "It's just an old house, Teresa. There's nothing to be afraid of." But as they moved deeper into the mansion, an unsettling feeling grew. Shadows seemed to dance just out of sight, and the air grew thick with an oppressive silence. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the hall. "What was that?" Teresa gasped, clutching Will's arm. "Probably just the wind," Will replied, though his voice betrayed his own unease. "Let's check it out." They followed the sound to a grand staircase that spiraled into the darkness above. With each step, the air seemed to grow heavier. At the top, they found a door slightly ajar, a faint light flickering from within. Pushing the door open, they entered what appeared to be a child's bedroom. The walls were adorned with faded drawings, and a small bed stood in the corner. A music box on a dusty shelf began to play a haunting melody on its own. Teresa felt a chill run down her spine. "Will, we should leave. This isn't right." Before Will could respond, the door slammed shut behind them. The room plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the eerie glow of the music box. Shadows twisted and writhed on the walls, and a cold, malevolent presence filled the room. "Who's there?" Will demanded, his voice shaking that a faint whisper filled the air, barely audible but unmistakable. "Leave this place." The temperature dropped further, their breath visible in the cold. The whisper grew louder, more insistent. "Leave, or suffer." Terrified, Will and Teresa stumbled towards the door, but it wouldn't budge. The room seemed to close in around them, the shadows becoming more tangible, more menacing. Desperate, Teresa grabbed the music box and hurled it against the wall. It shattered, and the room was plunged into silence. The oppressive weight lifted, and the door creaked open once more. They didn't wait. Hand in hand, they fled the mansion, not stopping until they were back in the safety of their car. As they drove away, they glanced back at the mansion, now shrouded in darkness once more. Neither of them spoke, but they both knew they had narrowly escaped something far worse than they could have imagined. The darkness of the night had revealed its terrible secret, one that would haunt them forever. As the days turned into weeks, the memory of the mansion continued to haunt Will and Teresa. Nightmares plagued their sleep, and an unshakable feeling of being watched followed them wherever they went. They tried to return to their normal lives, but the darkness of that night seemed to cling to them, a shadow they couldn't escape. One evening, while flipping through old town records at the library, Teresa stumbled upon a faded newspaper article about the mansion. It detailed the tragic story of the Blackwood family who had once lived there. Their young daughter, Emily, had mysteriously vanished one stormy night, and the family had abandoned the mansion soon after, unable to bear the sorrow of their loss. Rumors of the house being haunted by Emily's restless spirit had circulated ever since. "Will, look at this," Teresa said, showing him the article. "Do you think what we experienced could be connected to Emily?" Will read the article, his face growing pale. "It has to be. What if she's still trapped there, trying to reach out for help?" They decided they couldn't ignore it any longer. If Emily's spirit was indeed trapped, they needed to find a way to set her free. Armed with flashlights, sage, and a determination born of fear and compassion, they returned to the mansion. The air was thick with anticipation as they approached the front door. It groaned open, as if expecting them. Inside, the atmosphere was even more oppressive than before. The flickering shadows seemed to welcome them back with malevolent delight. "Emily?" Teresa called softly. "We're here to help you." A cold wind swept through the hallway, leading them back to the child's bedroom. The music box, which they had shattered, was mysteriously whole again. its haunting melody beginning to play the moment they stepped inside. Will and Teresa exchanged nervous glances. Teresa set down the sage and lit it, hoping to cleanse the space of its dark energy. The smoke swirled and danced, filling the room with a pungent aroma. "Emily, we know you're here," Will said gently. "If you can hear us, show us a sign." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the temperature dropped sharply, and the room filled with the soft sound of a child's laughter, sad and haunting. A faint figure appeared in the corner, a little girl with hollow eyes and a forlorn expression. "Emily?" Teresa asked, her voice breaking. The spirit nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the music box. Understanding dawned on Will. The music box, it must be the key to her being trapped here. Teresa picked up the music box, feeling its weight in her hands. "Emily, if we destroy this, will you be free?" The spirit nodded again, a single tear rolling down her translucent cheek. With a deep breath, Teresa threw the music box against the wall, smashing it into pieces once more. The room was filled with a blinding light, and Emily's spirit began to dissolve, her face finally showing a semblance of peace. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice echoing softly as she faded away. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a calm silence. Will and Teresa stood there, absorbing what had just happened. They had done it. He had freed Emily from her eternal torment. As they left the mansion for the final time, the first light of dawn was breaking on the horizon. The darkness of the night had been vanquished, and with it, the hold it had on them. They knew they would never forget Emily, but now, her memory would be a gentle reminder of their bravery and compassion, rather than a source of fear. In the following weeks, life slowly began to return to normal for Will and Teresa. The nightmares ceased, and the feeling of being watched dissipated. The town, unaware of the ordeal the couple had faced, went about its usual rhythm, the old mansion becoming just another part of the landscape once more. One evening, Teresa received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Hello?" she answered, curiosity tinged with caution. "Is this Teresa Blackwood?" The voice on the other end inquired, its tone both respectful and urgent. "Yes, this is she." "Who's speaking?" "This is Dr. Samuel Hayes, a historian specializing in local folklore and paranormal events. I understand you've had an encounter at the old Blackwood mansion." Teresa hesitated before responding. "Yes, we did. How did you know?" "I came across some of the records and news clippings you were looking at in the library. I've been studying the mansion for years, and your actions have had quite an impact." "An impact? How so?" Teresa asked, intrigued. "I believe you set something into motion, something significant. Would you and Will be willing to meet with me to discuss it further?" After a brief discussion, Teresa and Will agreed to meet Dr. Hayes at a local CAF the next day. They arrived to find a middle-aged man with graying hair and a stack of old books and papers in front of him. "Thank you for coming," Dr. Hayes said, shaking their hands. "What you did at the mansion was extraordinary, but I fear it may not be over." "What do you mean?" Will asked, a sense of dread creeping back. Dr. Hayes opened one of the books, revealing detailed sketches and notes about the Blackwood family and the mansion. "There are other spirits tied to that place. Emily's was the most prominent, but her release might have disturbed the others." Teresa felt a chill. "Others? How many?" "From my research, at least 3 more spirits are connected to the mansion, each with its own story and unresolved past." Will and Teresa exchanged worried glances. "What do we need to do?" Will asked. Dr. Hayes looked at them gravely. "Each spirit will have its own unique way of being freed. We must uncover their stories and find the means to release them. I can guide you through the process, but it will be dangerous." Determined to put an end to the mansion's dark legacy, Will and Teresa agreed to continue. Armed with more knowledge and Dr. Hayes' guidance, they returned to the mansion, prepared for the next chapter of their haunting journey. The first spirit they sought to free was that of Thomas Blackwood, the mansion's patriarch. According to Dr. Hayes, Thomas had been a wealthy businessman whose greed had caused much suffering. His spirit was said to haunt the mansion's library, where he had spent his final days. As they entered the library, they felt a sudden drop in temperature. The once grand room was filled with dust-covered books and the remnants of a past era. In the center stood a large, ornate desk with a leather-bound journal lying open. "This must be Thomas' journal," Teresa whispered, reaching for it. The moment she touched the journal, a ghostly figure materialized behind the desk. Thomas Blackwood's spirit, with a stern expression and piercing eyes, glared at them. "Why do you disturb my sanctuary?" His voice echoed through the room. "We're here to help you find peace," Will said firmly. "We know about your past, about the suffering you caused. It's time to make amends." Thomas' spirit sneered. "You think you can judge me? My actions were necessary for the prosperity of this family." Dr. Hayes stepped forward. "Thomas, your greed and actions have left a stain on this place. To free your spirit, you must acknowledge your wrongdoings and seek forgiveness." A look of anguish crossed Thomas' face. The room filled with a cacophony of whispered voices, the spirits of those he had wronged. The weight of his guilt became palpable. "Very well," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "I seek forgiveness for my greed and the pain I caused." As the words left his lips, the oppressive atmosphere in the room lifted. Thomas' spirit began to dissolve, his features softening into a peaceful expression. "Thank you," he whispered, fading into the ether. The library returned to its silent stillness, the air now clear and calm. Will, Teresa, and Dr. Hayes knew they had succeeded, but their journey was far from over. Two more spirits remained, each with their own dark secrets and path to redemption. With renewed resolve, they prepared to face the next challenge, determined to cleanse the mansion of its haunted past once and for all.